United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has issued a stark warning over the humanitarian situation in Gaza, describing the aid currently being allowed into the territory by Israel as deeply insufficient. It amounts to a teaspoon of aid when a flood of assistance is required, he told reporters. Guterres emphasized that without rapid, reliable, safe, and sustained access to humanitarian aid, more lives would be lost, and the long-term consequences for Gaza's population would be severe. He went on to denounce what he called the cruelest phase of this cruel conflict, stating that Palestinians in Gaza are enduring unimaginable suffering as Israel ramps up its military operations.
For nearly 80 days, Israel blocked the entry of life-saving international aid. As the world's leading hunger assessment found, the entire population of Gaza is facing the risk of famine. Families are being starved and denied the very basics, all with the world watching in real time. Israel has clear obligations under international humanitarian law. It must treat civilians humanely, with respect for their inherent dignity. It must not forcibly transport, deport or displace the civilian population of an occupied territory. And as the occupying power, it must agree to allow and facilitate the aid that is needed. Finally, a trickle of aid has crossed over. In recent days, almost 400 trucks were cleared for entry to Gaza through the Kerem-Shalom crossing. But supplies from only 115 trucks have been able to be collected, and nothing has reached the besieged north. We are working around the clock to get whatever aid we can to people in need, and we managed to distribute some wheat, flour, baby food, nutrition supplements, and medicines. At long last, a few bakeries in South and Central Gaza are operating. But let us not forget that we are operating in the middle of a military operation. In any case, all the aid authorized until now amounts to a teaspoon of aid when a flood of assistance is required. The needs are massive and the obstacles are staggering. Strict quotas are being imposed on the goods we distribute, along with unnecessary delay procedures. Other essentials, including fuel, shelter, cooking gas, and water purification supplies, are prohibited. We continue to request for safety and security mitigation measures to be in place for all convoys.
Meanwhile, political tensions within Israel have intensified. Defense Minister Israel Katz announced that he would seek to bar left-wing politician Yair Golan from reserve duty and prohibit him from wearing a military uniform or entering army bases. This decision follows remarks by Golan, a former major general, who sparked outrage after stating in a radio interview that a sane country does not kill babies for a hobby, though Golan later clarified that his comments were directed at government policy and not soldiers. He warned that Israel's actions in Gaza could turn it into a pariah state. Katz accused him of slander and moved to enforce the ban. In Switzerland, a local NGO has requested authorities to investigate the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an American-backed group that aims to implement a new aid distribution model in Gaza. The United Nations has expressed strong opposition to this plan, stating it is neither impartial nor neutral. According to the UN, the model risks further displacing civilians and exposing thousands to harm. The GHF, for its part, maintains that it strictly adheres to humanitarian principles and hopes to begin operations in Gaza by the end of May. International criticism of Israel's offensive continues to grow. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has lashed out at France, Britain, and Canada after their leaders threatened to take concrete action if the assault on Gaza doesn't cease. Netanyahu accused them of emboldening Hamas, stating, "You're on the wrong side of humanity and you're on the wrong side of history." In Berlin, a spokesperson for the German government echoed these concerns, calling the current aid effort into Gaza far too little, too late, and too slow. The spokesperson emphasized the urgent need to scale up humanitarian deliveries and ensure that aid reaches those suffering in Gaza. At the World Health Organization's annual assembly, Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus delivered an emotional plea. Fighting back tears, he urged Israel to show mercy in Gaza. Drawing on his own wartime experiences in Ethiopia, Tedros said he could feel the pain of Gaza's people. He condemned the weaponization of food and medical supplies, stating stating that only a political solution could bring lasting peace.
We ask member states to accept more patience, and we ask Israel to allow these evacuations and to allow urgently needed food and medicine to enter Gaza. WHO stands ready.
The Director General of Inter-Services Public Relations, Lieutenant General 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬𝐡'𝐬, has held India responsible for the recent terrorist attack on a school bus in 𝐄𝐧𝐬𝐬, Balochistan. Speaking at a press conference in Islamabad alongside Interior Secretary 𝐶𝐚𝐰𝐬, Lieutenant Gen 𝐶𝐴udhry stated that India's state-sponsored terrorism against Pakistan has been ongoing since the country's inception.
It's written Indians 20 years of state-sponsored terrorism, but actually it's much more. So we are just giving you a cut of the last 2 decades. Because the Indian state-sponsored terrorism actually goes since the inception of Pakistan. 1971 Mukti Bahani incident, the creation of Mukti Bahani, its funding that terror organization in the erstwhile East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, is a very, very clear manifestation of that. And it keeps on going. But if you see on this slide, and here I am focusing mostly on what's been happening in Balochistan.
Interior Secretary 𝐶𝐚𝐰𝐬 condemned the attack, which killed 6 children and injured 31 others, as a direct assault on Pakistan's values and its education system. He and Lieutenant Gen 𝐶𝐴udhry cited past incidents, including the Kulbhushan Jadhav case and attacks linked to Indian intelligence agency RA, to support their claims. Militant groups such as the Baloch Liberation Army and Fitna al-Hindustan were identified as Indian proxies.
It is with profound sorrow that I address you today in the aftermath of the despicable terrorist attack on a school bus in 𝐒𝐭𝐨𝐫𝐢 on the early morning of May 21st. This cowardly attack targeted innocent children, our future, resulting in the tragic loss of 7 lives, including 5 children and 6 children now, and injuries to 31 others. Let me be unequivocal that this was not an attack on a bus alone. It was an attack on our values, on our education, and on the very fabric of our society. On behalf of the government of Pakistan, I extend our deepest condolences to the families of the victims. We share their grief, and we stand by them in this hour of immense pain that they are suffering. The Ministry of Interior, in close cooperation with the provincial authorities and the law enforcement agencies, are looking into all angles of this dastardly attack. Initial findings confirm that this attack is in continuity of a broader pattern of violence sponsored by India through Fitna al-Hindustan.
The United Nations Security Council strongly condemned the 𝐄𝐧𝐬𝐬 bombing, calling it heinous and cowardly. It emphasized that terrorism poses a serious threat to global peace and urged full accountability. Pakistan's security forces vowed to relentlessly pursue the perpetrators of the attack, as Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir visited the injured in Quetta yesterday. Meanwhile, tensions between New Delhi and Islamabad have escalated following Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's public accusation that Pakistan was behind recent attacks in India. Pakistan's Foreign Office rejected the remarks as baseless and provocative, warning they could endanger regional stability.
Pakistan categorically rejects the baseless, provocative, and irresponsible allegations made by the Indian Prime Minister during a recent public address in Rajasthan. The remarks, replete with distortions, misrepresentations, and inflammatory rhetoric, are clearly aimed at stoking regional tensions for narrow political gains. Such statements not only reflect a deliberate attempt to mislead the public, but also violate the norms of responsible statecraft. Resorting to threats and boasting about military action against a sovereign nation is a grave breach of United Nations Charter and established principles of international law. This dangerous approach undermines regional peace and stability. Pakistan remains a consistent and proactive partner in the global fight against terrorism. Any insinuation seeking to associate Pakistan with acts of terrorism is factually incorrect and patently misleading. It is a tactic often employed to divert attention from India's own internal challenges as well as its repressive policies in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's attempt to mask its serious human rights violations are well documented and well recognized by the international community. The plight of the Kashmiri people and their just struggle for self-determination cannot be obscured by aggressive rhetoric and political deflection.
The recent military standoff, including Indian airstrikes and Pakistani retaliation that downed 5 Indian jets, ended only after U.S. mediation. Islamabad reiterated its commitment to peace but warned that any aggression would be met with a strong response. On the diplomatic front, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬𝐬 described his recent visit to China as a major success. Agreements were reached with Beijing and Kabul to prevent cross-border terrorism. China also expressed willingness to fund the Pakistan-Afghanistan-Uzbekistan Railway, boosting regional trade under the Belt and Road Initiative. Dar reaffirmed Chinese support for Pakistan on Kashmir and broader regional security. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Friday that President Trump's proposed 50% tariff on European Union goods is intended to pressure Brussels into offering better trade terms. Speaking to Fox News, Bessent said the EU's proposals have lagged behind offers from other partners like India and some Asian nations. He characterized the EU as suffering from a collective action problem, where 27 member states are inefficiently represented by a single body in Brussels. The announcement comes after a tense G7 finance ministers meeting in Banff, where U.S. tariff threats were a key point of contention. Trump's tariff threat is set to take effect June 1st, impacting luxury goods, pharmaceuticals, and more. He also floated a 25% tariff on Apple iPhones made outside the U.S., primarily targeting manufacturing in China and India. Markets responded sharply. The S&P 500 futures dropped 1.5%, the Euro Stoxx 600 slid 2%, and Apple stock fell 3.5%. Trump insisted on Truth Social that Apple must relocate production to the U.S., despite legal questions surrounding such a move. Meanwhile, Harvard University sued the Trump administration after it moved to strip the school of its ability to enroll international students, citing links to anti-Semitism and the Chinese Communist Party. Harvard President Alan Garber called the action unconstitutional and retaliatory, warning it could affect 7,000 students and damage the university's global academic mission.